The way it flew up, it was terrifying.
Welcome to WatchMojo UK, and in today's unranked list we are looking at the most frightening and disturbing things to have been broadcast on the news.
All we're being told is it's a major inch and the whole of the London Underground is now shut.
Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
The Southern Television broadcast hijack. We're beginning with something a little sillier before we get into more serious subject matter, but it may still have frightened you if you'd been watching ITN in 1977 and witnessed this. During a live news report, somebody managed to hijack Southern Television's signal and broadcast a message claiming to be an alien. This was possible because the transmitters were barely protected, but the culprit was never caught. While it's funny in hindsight to hear someone with an English accent announce that they're a friendly alien in the early evening, a lot of people at the time were disturbed and worried by what they'd seen on TV. To this day, a handful of people still think it really could have been an alien visitor. The 2007 floods.
No fresh water and now no power. The floods tighten their grip across swathes of central, southern and western England.
Huge areas of the UK were covered in water in 2007 when we were struck by some of the worst floods on record. More of the UK was affected by the rain that wasn't, including London and other major cities, with multiple rivers bursting their banks.
In Pickering, the town's beck spilled over and thrust a torrent towards the bottom of the High Street and towards the North York Moors railway station.
It was harrowing to watch the water rising on the news as cars and buildings became consumed by water. The RAF was enlisted to air evacuate people who got stranded by the floodwaters, which is dangerous because of the potential for contamination, as was the army.
Electricity supplies have been hit as well. Nearly 50,000 people across Gloucestershire and Herefordshire are without power.
There were years of inquiries about why local authorities had such poor flood defences and why the government response hadn't been better. The Iranian Embassy siege. For 6 days, the world watched as a hostage situation unfolded in the middle of London. Half a dozen gunmen took over 20 people hostage on the 30th of April 1980, and then, days later, the SAS raided the compound. The British government refused to meet the demands of the gunmen and sent in specialist soldiers, and the raid ended up being broadcast on live television on the 5th of May. People saw them abseil down and saw them throw in grenades. 5 of the 6 gunmen were killed by the SAS, with 1 being arrested. It's believed that the final gunman would have been killed too had a soldier not decided against it because of the optics of this happening on live television. The Westminster Bridge attack.
At this point, it was just an ordinary car driving round a roundabout in Waterloo.
The attack itself wasn't broadcast live because it was over in under 2 minutes, but helicopters soon swarmed the scene on Westminster Bridge to provide aerial coverage, with people terrified that their loved ones were caught up in the incident.
We're on standby for a major incident. Westminster Bridge.
Months later though, and we got more insight because the TV documentary series Hospital was filming at St Mary's Hospital in London at the time and captured the entire NHS response.
A police officer has been stabbed in the Houses of Parliament in central London.
Are you on the news channel?
While rolling coverage was keeping everybody glued to their sets, doctors, nurses and other hospital staff were working round the clock to create enough capacity for the victims. 5 people died, including PC Keith Palmer, and other police officers eliminated the attacker.
We can see on the TV there what's going on.
We know that 1 police officer has been stabbed and that assailant has been shot.
John Gummer.
The Agriculture Minister, John Gummer, today enrolled his daughter Cordelia in his campaign to persuade people that eating beef is safe.
For years, the BSE crisis grew quietly, with more and more cows mysteriously affected with a fatal illness. But by 1990, it became clear that BSE could spread between species if infected meat was eaten. To prove otherwise though, John Gummer and his young daughter Cordelia appeared on television eating burgers made of British beef.
It was a little hot for her.
Too hot!
but later he munched it himself to prove to the world that he at least is confident there's nothing to worry about.
Cordelia was, thankfully, fine, but a lot of other people weren't, because as we all know now, BSE did make the jump to humans, causing a disease called variant CJD. It wasn't until 1997 that an inquiry was launched, years after millions of cattle were culled. It's chilling to watch this news footage now, knowing that the risk was very real.
There is no need for people to be worried, and I can say perfectly honestly that I shall go on eating beef as my children will go on eating beef, because there is no need to be worried.
7-7.
Reports are just coming in of an explosion at Liverpool Street Station here in London.
The initial 3 blasts that went off on the London Underground during the 7-7 attacks in 2005 weren't seen live, but about an hour later, a 4th bomb went off on a bus in Tavistock Square. It wasn't until this happened that it became clear that the incident was a coordinated attack and not some kind of power surge, as was previously believed when there was no information.
All of a sudden there was just an explosion, big white appeared, and then it was just smoke everywhere. In the tunnel, we was trying to close the doors because it was just smoke, we couldn't breathe.
52 people died, with surviving passengers filmed as they flooded the streets, having walked along the tracks to escape the tube tunnels in the aftermath. Thankfully, there were no other attacks that day, but after the 4th device was detonated, people lived in fear that a 5th could strike as they watched the non-stop media coverage.
All of London's transport is currently disabled or stopped, whether that's buses or trains. So the safest thing that everybody can do is to stay where they are.
2024 riots.
A wave of unrest started after an attack at a Taylor Swift dance class in Southport, but fueled by racist misinformation.
For days in 2024, riots raged across the UK following widespread misinformation about the devastating Southport killings. The public was wrongly told that the killer was a Muslim asylum seeker, though he was actually raised by Christian parents and was born in Cardiff. Violence raged, with police and innocent people attacked in the streets, with over 1,000 ultimately arrested.
And as it went on, they weren't just using bricks and slabs of wall, but petrol bombs and burning wheelie bins.
Twitter, now X, became rife for circulating misinformation and fueling the violence, which was being broadcast as it happened. Some news reporters said they were fearing for their lives while watching the riots unfold. It's a miracle that nobody died, though over 100 police officers were injured.
More than 100 people were arrested for various offences that evening, including violent disorder, assaults on officers, possessing Class A drugs, and carrying knives and other offensive weapons.
Grenfell Tower.
I wasn't woken up by the alarms at all. They were very, very quiet alarms.
For almost 3 days in 2017, Grenfell Tower, a high-rise in Kensington, burned, with 24/7 news coverage of the devastating fire. 72 people died, with a further 74 injured, in a blaze that began due to a faulty appliance. The fire was made significantly more dangerous because the building was lined with flammable cladding and didn't have adequate sprinklers or fire alarms, despite residents warning authorities for months that something needed to be done.
The Prime Minister has finally announced a full public inquiry, and today the Chancellor's shock revelation that the cladding around the building may have been banned.
In the end, all the country could do was watch in horror as the disaster unfolded. Investigations and inquiries to try and determine exactly who is to blame remain ongoing nearly a decade later.
In the first of many news conferences that day, the most senior fire officer in London confirmed the enormity of the disaster.
Airstrikes.
Oh my God, yes, I need to go down. Ah!
We've all gotten far too used to seeing and hearing things like this on the news. With the ongoing wars in both Ukraine and Gaza, it's now commonplace to be watching live video or even a live television news report from one of those war-torn regions, and then witness people duck and cover as a bomb or a missile emerges.
Very close to the front lines was hit, more than a dozen.
In one particularly harrowing incident on American networks, a doctor in a hospital in Gaza was being interviewed when missiles began to fall. She was asked if she needed to go and find a bomb shelter somewhere, and chillingly responded by telling the anchor that there were no bomb shelters in Gaza.
I mean, in the entire Gaza Strip, I mean, we don't have shelters.
Albert Dryden.
It should have been a routine end to a 3-year planning row.
This shocking incident was all broadcast live in 1991 as the BBC turned up to report on an ongoing dispute and standoff with a local man named Albert Dryden. Dryden had been building on his property without planning permission, but rather than listen to the council, and later the police, and tear the building down, he armed himself and threatened police with explosive devices.
Can you get a shot of this gun?
Using an old revolver, Dryden shot local planning officer Harry Collinson point blank. He died, and everybody else fled, with a police officer and BBC journalist also getting shot, but non-lethally.
We were standing watching what was going on. The chief planner was trying to persuade the chap to move out the way and let the digger go in. And then a shot rang out at the chief planner, fell to the ground.
Dryden was eventually tackled and sentenced to life imprisonment, with the entire crime caught on camera. Did you see any of these live? Share your memories, if so.
The fire, and the response to it, was rapidly becoming a pressing political issue.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojo UK and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.